So this video, we're going to take one of my new original characters and design a reference sheet for him. The way I approach reference sheets is different than those animators or fursuiters use. If you want to make a reference sheet for one of those, this video isn't going to help you. But if you need to hand a reference sheet over that's artist proof, keep watching, because I'm going to talk to you about designing a reference sheet that is clear to any artist regardless of their skill, experience level, or if you know them. Because if there's one thing I do know, is that if your artist has to guess on something unclear in your reference sheet, they're not going to ask first, they're going to guess, and that leads to a lot of headache. Your mileage may vary, of course. Be sure to bend all the rules you want. I am not an expert. These are just guidelines. Open up a Word document or whatever word processor you have. Even Notepad works fine. Write out the basic information of your character. Name, age, sex, gender, eye color, birth sign, birthday, whatever. Then write out every detail about your character, even if you're going to draw it. Write out their clothes, write out their markings, birthmarks, whatever. If there's any personality quirks that impact their art, write that in too. Anything artistically important should be listed, including how they wear clothing, any anatomical quirks you want to make sure an artist remembers or is important. For example, a character whose ears have a limited range of motion. If your style omits thumbs and you want to make sure artists include this too, add it. If referencing a certain character could give your artist an inspiration, like a mood board, mention that in a different section. You want to make a lot of sections. Organize them. If your character has any inspiration or has a body type like another famous cartoon character, include that. For example, if your OC is a Night Fury, make sure to mention that it is, in fact, a Night Fury from How to Train Your Dragon. Double important, if there are quirks different from a Night Fury, you want to make sure that's super clear as well. If there are parts of your character that differ from average expectation, write that down too. If your female mammalian character doesn't have breasts, make that painfully and obviously clear to the artist. Don't think that just because the reference sheet doesn't include breasts that the artist will naturally not include them. Then, once you've done, save it and put it aside for a week. Come back to it periodically as you remember all the small details so you don't pull a me, write out your entire first line as text info last, and forget to mention that she's left-handed. You don't want to do it. Now that you've got all the information written down, checked and double-checked spelling, and made sure you have all the details you need, it's better to have too many than too few. Open up your art program. I used to make wide, sparse reference sheets, and though these are super easy to share, they are super easy to misinterpret. First off, if your reference sheet is digital art, you want to make it, in my opinion, longer than it is tall. Monitors might be getting larger, but we still scroll down more than we scroll left or right, so you want the layout to be a top-down experience that stays a consistent width. Add onto the canvas as needed, but always add onto it vertically, not horizontally. Start planning out your layout. If your art program has a rectangle tool, this is a great place to use it. Start making boxes for the name of your character and their basic info. The basic info should be their age, sex, etc. Anything else that you would need to know about upfront. Make this box a little bigger than you think you'll need in case you want to write out an introductory paragraph. This is especially important if your character is a species that isn't immediately known. If it's a humanoid, this would be a nice place for general personality. This is a good place to put a size comparison if your character is very big or very small compared to a human. Show how big they are with silhouettes, marking off how big the human is and how big the character is. With quadrupeds, it's common to go by shoulder height. If you need a human silhouette, there's often public domain images that fit the bill. In Hybrid's newest reference sheet, I explain how her anatomy works, as well as the quote of her origin. This is the only real lore she has. I mention likes, dislikes, and provide a song list. These are always nice and important to have. Your character has no set outfit, but you don't want to draw all possible and endless outfits. Don't be afraid to dedicate a section including the do's and don'ts. Making a do and don't list for anything is clear, concise, and tells the artist some hard and fast rules. I want to put the clothing list right away, rather after the artist's eyes have seen the character itself, so further down the reference sheet. This is also the point where I'd like to dedicate a specific area for the colors of your character. These are most important. They need to be very clearly organized in some way. In my opinion, this should be even before the character itself. This is what the artist needs most, so make it noticeable. Not all reference sheets I've had have this, and depending on their use, this is fine, but for an artist, I think the worst mistake you can make is not including them. Modders display colors differently, and the ability to just eyedrop makes this process easier. Including the hexadecimal or RGB values are optional for the colors. Sometimes I've included them, sometimes not. Back in the day, not all programs had eyedroppers. Continue blocking out the rest of your reference sheet based on the information you provided. At least you want one side or front view of your character, but most likely you want a front or side view and a shot that clearly shows all of the face, so plan accordingly. In Hybrid's reference sheet, I have sections for her feral form, anthro form, and multiple areas for details regarding her markings and accessory notes. How many blocks you need depends upon the detail of your character. For another character I did, his sheet is much more basic. He has a front and side view, the rest is all text with a few other pictures showing off how his markings work. Complex markings, variations of markings, or accessories are always a great thing to have. The size of your blocks can be changed later, but start thinking about how you want your text to read. You can write in paragraph style next to a picture of the character, or you can write bits of info near the corresponding body part like I did with hybrids. Try to only include details that aid in how the artist should portray the character. You want physical references, things the artist can look up or compare things to. You don't need to include any colors because the artist already has those and it takes up space. For example, hybrid's tail is not prehensile, so I am sure to mention this in a text block near her tail. Her ears also always face forward, so I mention that as well. If you're not sure what details are important, approach a character as if you're a stranger. All you're handed is this reference sheet, nothing else, and that is all you have to go on. Be sure when you do add text, which will be last, that you try not to clutter everything up. You need important details, yes, but you only have limited space before the details become superfluous and the artist has to wade through them. This is why I prefer the method of putting short sentences near the body parts. That way, everything is concise and clear, the artist has everything they need at a glance without having to search through the entire document. Once you have all sections planned out, be sure to organize either the text document or the picture file accordingly. That is, write notes so when you finish the reference sheet, you remember what goes where, like this. Now, onto the drawing. Start drawing the first of many pictures of your character. Depending on the species and context of your character, you have to decide what pose and how many poses to draw. In fursuits and animation, it's common to do a turnaround, front, side, back view. However, I found for art references this isn't always necessary. What your character's context is and what they are will determine how many angles you need and what angles these are. In general, I suggest for any humanoids or bipedal creatures to have at least a front-facing A-pose-like view, the A-pose being similar to a T-pose, but shows off the hands a little better. If your character has markings or tattoos or other important details on the back, do a back view as well. In my hybrid example, she has very few markings. I posed her to show off the markings she does have and to get a nice view of the paw pads. This pose also shows off hybrid's personality. Be careful with the poses you do choose. In Hybrid's old reference sheet, I ended up cutting off her other arm, which at a glance gives the wrong impression about her design. For quadruped animals, a side view is better suited to them, similar to how I did this character's. If there are complex back markings, a top-down view will work as well. Dragons, griffins, and other winged animals, it's in your best interest to draw a slightly anatomy-breaking side view that shows the wing stretched out and, if applicable, without the wing at all. Some people even omit tails when they block markings or details, and this is totally fine. Omit as you like. Omit hair, omit scars, etc. Whatever you need to get the clearest idea of your character. A note on nudity. Hybrid is covered in fur, and in general, I keep any sexual characteristics to a minimum. I do, however, include teats on her reference sheet if the artist deems them necessary. It's up to you if your reference sheet shows explicit nudity. However, I strongly suggest you make a safe for work version, either having underwear or censoring and leaving out any explicit sexual details. This is to make your character easier to show to artists, as some artists won't do not safe for work. As of me making this video, Twitter has no good way to censor or tag images. If someone is asking for a reference sheet in the replies, publicly posting your character's not safe for work reference sheet is often not appreciated. By all means, have a not safe for work reference sheet, but consider making a safe for work one too. I should also note that by nudity I mean genitalia, not furry animals that are covered in fur and show no genitalia. Nipples, as well, are a gray area. I tend to admit them, and my character in this example doesn't have any. Include them if you think it's necessary. If your character has a standard outfit, usually humanoids will, show it off. If your human character will never or almost never need to be naked, feel free to just show them with some common outfits. In this character's case, he's in a comic, his clothing is standardized. After the full body is drawn, work on headshots. I always recommend headshots, regardless of the character type. Make it a side view or 3/4 view, just to help artists visualize your character. There's also another good shot to provide detailed description. I also recommend, for characters that have hair, that you provide multiple headshots to show how their hair works from every angle, as it always isn't obvious. If you know the name of the hairdo they have, be sure to write that down, because not all artists know what a hairdo is called, and trying to make up how gravity works with weird hair is a complex and often time-consuming process. In hybrids, I use 2 different headshots, one to show off for markings and one to show off for apparel. Hybrid's reference sheet is also unique in that I include variations. I include different options for artists to pick and choose from to best suit their style. This is totally optional, just something I employ to give people wiggle room, as I, for one, like to experiment and mess with the hybrid's design, and I don't want to update a reference sheet every other minute of the day. Once you've drawn and colored all of your line art, let's round this up. Whatever you do, don't shade. I know it is tempting to shade, but never, under any circumstances, shade your reference sheet. If your character has gradients, it would be confusing to tell what is and isn't the actual base color. I've seen reference sheets that have no color key and shading. These reference sheets are most difficult to navigate. If you take nothing else from this video, remember this: don't shade reference sheets. Block in your text, position your text last after you've drawn all the other art. This way you can mess around with placement, font, etc. In general, on digital media, we tend to read sans serif text easier. That is, text that doesn't have the fancy swirls and swoops. Verdana and Calibri are favorites of mine. You can use specific text for titles or names, but I am really against using handwriting. Handwriting might be easy, but it isn't clear. Misreading or misinterpreting someone's handwriting can be disastrous. Double check for typos here, again, just in case you missed it on the first go. After the text is blocked in, you want to start making choices about the colors of your reference sheet. You want neutral colors. Grays and browns work best, as these reference sheets are very text heavy. Based on your eyes and taste, you can either make a base color with the blocked in sections a lighter color, or choose a base color with the blocked in sections a darker color. If your character is neutral colored, pick paler or desaturated colors. In short, you want your character to stand out as much as possible. If you're afraid your character is getting lost, give their outline a border that's thicker and draws the eye. You can do the same with the title and text in the reference sheet. Feel free to experiment with colors. The most important thing is readability. Some people use textures, and these can work wonderfully, but use them sparingly, and also make sure you aren't stealing art. This is a reference sheet. Every detail in color should matter, and textures tend to draw attention away from the subject. Now, onto the cons of this way of doing reference sheets. Now, hopefully, you have a very long reference sheet, you save it. This is an ungainly looking reference sheet, and that's its biggest con. Places like Twitter will compress images and make them not readable. Printing out this reference sheet for use at a con will use a lot of ink, and emailing it can immediately intimidate or annoy an artist who has seen so many overly cluttered and detailed reference sheets. I cut Hybrid's reference sheet in pieces so I can easily share it online, but I admit that I rarely show her reference sheet to strangers doing art, as I'm afraid it's far too detailed at a glance and could scare others off. This is a notable con. However, the alternatives, reference sheets that are squished and unorganized, don't appeal to me. I've done them quite a few times. They're quick and easy to just get anything down on paper, but in the long run, if you want accurate art for your character, in my opinion, it's better to have too much than too little. Thank you for watching my video. Please be sure to subscribe as I post a video weekly, and hit the bell like every other YouTuber tells you to do. Special thanks to my patrons over on Patreon. Without them, this video wouldn't be possible. Baja Dragoon, Drew, and Lucretes. Also have a Ko-Fi set up for one-time supporters. Thank you to everyone who donates, and I'll see you next week.